Hi everyone, thank you for joining us. My name is Azusa Oda, author of Japanese Cookbook for Beginners and the food blog Humble Bean. I'm going to be demonstrating how to make ozoni. Today it's a New Year's soup with mochi. I wanted to start by making the mochi itself because I know with the pandemic, many events will be canceled, including mochitsuki that usually happens annually, where a community comes together and pounds their mochi. So we're gonna start with a short grain sweet rice as opposed to just a regular sushi rice or a Japanese short grain rice. It should say somewhere on the front, sweet rice. This one I'm using is from JFC, and JFC is actually a really interesting company. They've merged with Kikkoman too, and Kikkoman has a long history with the Japanese American community. The first immigrants that came to Hawaii actually brought with them shoyu. I guess they knew they were gonna need this as part of their daily lives. So that shoyu that they brought actually eventually turned into Kikkoman. So it's kind of like a household name, but it actually has a very centuries old history. And they actually brew their shoyu in Wisconsin, which I didn't know. So we're gonna start by, I've actually already washed, rinsed, and drained the mochigome, and I've let it soak. And the ratio you're looking for is 1:1. So 1 cup of rice, 1 cup of water. So I've had that soaking for a while now, so I'm gonna go ahead and turn that on and we're gonna get started. Okay, so we're gonna let that rice come to a boil. Once it does, I'll put the lid on it, turn the heat down to low, and then cook that for 20 minutes, and then steam for additional 10 minutes at least. Now that we have that going, I'm also going to make the dashi. I usually make it with kombu and katsuobushi, but I have this product from Mutual Trading. It's dashi pack. It comes in a bag like this. This is actually for restaurant use. So if you Google MTC Kitchen Home, you'll find a wide-ranging product, including dashi packs you can use at home. I try to look for ones that have no additives, and actually they have a lot of kitchen tools and very cool things that you can't find everywhere. So I would highly recommend going there. But we're gonna go ahead and boil this for a little bit. I've had kombu soaking in the water, and I'm gonna add this once that comes to a boil and kind of simmer it or keep it on low for about like 20 minutes. So that'll be the base of our ozoni, the soup, the dashi. Next, I'm gonna use about maybe a quarter of this carrot. It's not very long, it's pretty short. And I'm gonna peel it. And if you have like one of those vegetable cutters it's kind of like a cookie cutter, but smaller, that can give you a nice shape, like a sakura flower petal shape, then that's where you can use that here. I'm gonna cut these in about, I would say, 1/8 of an inch. Cut them a little thin so that when we go to cook it won't take too long. Maybe about 8 slices, so that since this is gonna serve 2 carrots per bowl. And I'm gonna go ahead and set this aside. I also have here komatsuna, steamed komatsuna that I've also squeezed to let all of the water out. It's a Japanese mustard spinach, but you can also use regular spinach. I wouldn't use baby spinach because it sort of disintegrates and gets a little slimy. So just regular spinach, which you can steam for maybe 4 minutes and then squeeze the liquid out. The other thing I'm gonna have in my ozoni is kamaboko. Kamaboko is a fish cake that is white on the inside. It's shaped in a half moon. It's white on the inside and red on the outside. They also have one that's all white. So this is by Kibun. It's a well-known Japanese fish cake maker, and they are also being distributed by JFC. And you can find this any time of the year, but kamaboko is used especially New Year's too. So we're gonna open this and slice it up. kamaboko has already been cooked, so we don't need to worry about that. And if you want, you can also use kamaboko in udon and soba, soup dishes, and also if I have some left over, I will chop it up and use it in fried rice. So before we move to the chicken, I'm going to just separate the shimeji. It comes in a bunch like this. You can also use shiitake and other mushrooms, whatever's available for you. Another thing you can add is Mitsuba, which adds a nice fragrant herbal quality. It brightens up the ozoni because the ozoni is very savory. So that's what the Mitsuba does. It's like a Japanese parsley, but we don't have that today. So, or yuzu. Yuzu peel is another one of those accents that you can put to brighten up the soup. I'm going to use lemon zest for today's purposes. And you don't need to add too many ingredients in each soup bowl. It's okay to have a lot of soup and just a scattering of ingredients. And because the mochi is in there, it's going to give you some substance. So we're going to just have a little bit of each vegetable and fish cake in there. So I have this very tiny lemon from my yard. I'm going to just take my peeler and run it along the skin to get probably small pieces like that to garnish the ozoni with. So I have here boneless, skinless chicken thigh. You could also use chicken tender, something that won't get too tough when you cook it. I'm gonna trim the fat off this chicken. And usually when I flip it over, there are two places that I look. One is on this side, and I do kind of like a incision, and then that reveals this white connective tissue. So I'll just run my knife along that to release it. And then on the other side, there usually is a pocket of fat. So I usually try to score the chicken, and here we go. It's right here. So I kind of run my knife along that and remove it. This ozoni is not a fatty soup. It's very clear, clean tasting soup. So that's why I'm trying to remove as much of the fat out as possible. And once we have it trimmed, then we can cut it into small bite-sized pieces. So I'm going to cut this way and maybe into thirds, and just go along the thigh that way, cutting into thirds. Okay, now we're ready for the mochi making. The rice is done. I've cooked it for about 20 minutes and let it steam for about 15. I have a wet towel here. I'm gonna place this at the bottom of my bowl because this will help stabilize the bowl and not have it knocking around while I'm pounding. Also, I've wet the inside of the bowl. The water is gonna help prevent the rice from sticking because it's very sticky and very hot. So please be careful when making this. Here's my rice paddle that I've dipped in water. It's handy to have a bowl of water close by because we're gonna be using that frequently. So here is the rice, this mochi gome. It's very, very sticky. I have here a surikogi. This is usually used to grind sesame seeds in a suribachi. You could also use any kind of dowel. I have another rolling, this I got at a Chinese market. It's just a regular dowel. You can use this too. Just remember to put it in water to prevent it from sticking. So what we're gonna do, like I said, dip this and then begin to kind of work the rice. So right now I'm just rotating the bowl counterclockwise and pounding, and occasionally dipping in water. can even say mochi, 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 mochi. I still have very distinct grains here, but once you've gone around and you want to kind of flip this, again, dip your rice paddle in water and bring it up. I don't know if any of you have gone to a mochitsuki, but they always have someone flipping the rice from bottom to top, bottom to top. So that's what I'm kind of mimicking here. And then go back to pounding. This is getting really close. I'm not sure if you can tell, but it's now looking like one glob, a little bit bumpy. So we're gonna try to pound this out to make it smooth. Okay, so this is looking good. I'm going to get ready for the next step. We're gonna need Katakuriko, which is potato starch or potato flour. You can find it at Whole Foods, Japanese markets, other Asian markets probably. I also found it at my local bulk food store. And the reason why we use Katakuriko instead of, let's say, like mochiko, the rice flour, is because it's a little less expensive to use. Okay, so let's get ready for that. I have Katakuriko here. You're gonna want to be generous with this and coat your entire board. And also, I'm going to have a little extra mound on the side. The other thing you want to have prepared is some kind of tray or baking sheet. And this is where we're going to put the mochi, the shaped mochi. And I'm going to just dust this with Katakuriko as well. Because even after you shape it, it's going to tend, after it sits a while, the flour kind of absorbs the moisture and it's going to want to stick. So I'm just lightly dusting my baking sheet. Okay. Now make sure your rice paddle is wet. I'm going to scrape the mochi onto my board here. Trying to do it in one piece. And we're going to dust it on the top as well as the sides. The sides need dusting. And like I said, you can be pretty generous with this flour. Otherwise, it's gonna start sticking to your hands very quickly. Okay. And I kind of usually shape it into a log, and then starting on one side, I will pinch. Remember, it's sticky, so you need that Katakuriko. Pinch a piece, maybe this size. You can go smaller, larger, depending on what you want. And I tend to move the mochi along my palm here. And what I'm trying to do is make that mochi smooth on the top. So I'm doing that. If you're into bread baking, this is similar to shaping a loaf. But I'm kind of pulling so the surface of the mochi gets kind of pulled underneath, and then I'm shaping it into a nice round piece. So once I have a nicely shaped circle, I'm gonna place this on my baking sheet and then continue. And we'll see how many pieces we'll be able to make with this batch. Okay, so we're done shaping the mochi. From the 2 Japanese rice cups of mochi gome, which is about 1.5 cups of American cups, I have here about 18 pieces of mochi. So we're gonna set this aside. So now that the dashi is done, I'm scooping in roughly between 3¼ and 3½ cups of dashi. That's about 800 milliliters. Okay, I'm gonna set this on medium heat. And we're gonna wait for that to come to a boil. The other ingredients we're gonna use is mirin. This mirin is by Takara. And they're a company that originated in Kyoto. They actually brew this now in Berkeley. So both the mirin and the sake, we're going to use both of these today. Now that the dashi has come to a boil, I'm first going to add the carrots. These carrots are going to cook simmered for about 2 minutes. Next, we're going to add the chicken. I'm adding it one at a time because I don't want the chicken to clump together and cook because they'll stick together. And we'll let that cook for about 3 minutes. I'm going to add the shimeji here. The shimeji cooks really fast, so we're going to add that last. And then let's season it. We're going to turn the heat down to low. And I'm going to add 3 tablespoons shoyu. One tablespoon sake. And I'm going to add 2 teaspoons mirin. Ooh. And I'm going to let that cook so the alcohol cooks off for about a couple more minutes. Okay, so we're going to plate the ozoni. I'm going to put this fresh mochi in here just as is, but if you have day-old mochi or older mochi that is hard, or even the store-bought mochi that comes in a rectangle or a circle, you'll want to cook that maybe in a toaster oven if you have it, or on a dry pan, maybe with the lid on, and wait for that to soften and puff up, and you'll get a nice crispy, crunchy edge, which is also nice. But since this is fresh, I'm going to go ahead and put this in the bowl. I'm going to add a piece of kamaboko, and I'm going to also add some of the steamed komatsuna, or spinach if you have it, both the leaves and the stem. And then we're going to ladle the broth in. So after you've seasoned the ozoni and it's warmed, I recommend tasting it. And a lot of this is by preference. Oh, it's really good. It's very warming. The katsuobushi is really nice. Or the dashi, I can really taste that smoky flavor. And it should be a little bit on the salty side because you have the mochi inside the soup to kind of offset that saltiness. And I think it tastes good as is. So I'm going to go ahead and ladle the soup in the bowl. So we have some shimeji in there. And I'm also going to put some of the carrots and chicken, maybe a couple pieces each. Like I said, it shouldn't be overrun with too many ingredients. I like having the addition of the carrot and the spinach because it adds nice color. And of course, some shimeji. Let's put a couple more in there. And we'll want to top it with that lemon zest. So that's the ozoni, and I hope you have a chance to make it for your New Year's. It's, like I said, really warming. Oh, has that really clean flavor from the soup, and that the kind of fragrant lemon is really nice. It kind of cuts through, it has that citrus brightness. And the way that I eat it is take a little nibble of the mochi and a sip of the soup. Because remember, the mochi is plain, so you need the soup to kind of season it. And a little bite of the kamaboko. So that's how you make ozoni. I hope you all have a chance to make this at home for your New Year's.